Hello, this is Chuck Solomon, and welcome to the Candidate Experience Podcast, where we focus on the job candidate journey from apply to onboard and the space in between. Let's get started. You care about the candidate experience, but have you ever wondered exactly how to bring your company to that next level and offer a world-class experience to your candidates? It's not easy. Fortunately, Candidate.fyi can help. Their solution guides candidates through your hiring journey, enhancing transparency and communication at every touch point. You'll also gain valuable insights on what's working and what's not with your hiring process. Best of all, it integrates directly with your ATS. Head on over to Candidate.fyi and see how to transform your company's candidate experience today. Welcome to the Accidentally on Purpose episode, where Will Barfield is my special guest. Listen to the insights he shares on how to effectively network to help build your career. If you like what you hear on this podcast, please subscribe and do share with others. Want to comment, discuss, provide feedback, you can send me a note via LinkedIn or via the contact form on our site, www.thecx.xyz. Thanks for listening, and here's my interview. I've got Will Barfield today. I think I would describe him as a expert networker, master networker. In fact, Will, in the past, I think month or two, I've been talking with people about some ideas and stuff, and they were like, I've heard from, I think, 4 different people, and I'm not exaggerating here, 4 people that said, have you talked to Will Barfield about this yet? So I think that's I think we're going to talk about a little bit different things today. I want to talk about networking and how networking can help your career. But I think I've found a master networker in you.
Well, you're very kind. I will tell you, I've been very intentional about network building. It really significantly helped my sales career, and now that I'm in a really the dual threat business development role of new business development from a client perspective, but also placing business development people, sales, marketing, et cetera, with companies. Networking and having a super strong network is essential. It's probably even more so on the recruiting side than it was in sales, and it continues to be invaluable.
Sure. How, going back a little bit, like, how did you get into recruiting?
Well, I went to work for Frankel Staffing Partners in October of 2004.
Gotcha.
I was in outside sales in baseball. I worked for the Carolina Mudcats for 6 years right out of college, and I sold to human resources professionals and to business owners in our local market. I sold fun to HR people. I sold them employee entertainment and events and picnics and parties and baseball outdoor socials for the summer. And I sold advertising and sponsorship to small business owners. And I loved outside sales, and I loved selling in a triangle market. And I was referred through my network, actually through my wife, who we were dating at the time, to Frankel Staffing Partners. She said, maybe you should talk to them about how they can help you find a different position. Because where I was in baseball, there was nowhere else to move up. Director of sales was as high as I was going to go. And if I wanted to make more money or do something different, I'd have to, leave and go to a team in some other city. And that really wasn't an option for me. So talked to Lee Frankel at Frankel Staffing Partners, and we kind of hashed it out. Long story short, determined that, well, in the staffing business, I'm selling to the same buying personas, HR leaders and small business owners. And I was already an outside local B2B sales guy. So went to work for her doing the same thing, but instead of selling fun, I was selling, staff augmentation. But after about a year or so in the business, and I'm primarily out there in the market trying to collect administrative and operations, human resources, and other types of white collar jobs, there was a need in the area at that point in time as our startup and emerging tech sector was beginning to scale for salespeople. And there really wasn't a staffing industry solution in the market providing sales recruiting at that point in time. And so I worked with the owners to start that practice inside Frankel. And because there was no recruiter on the team at that point that had any sales recruiting expertise, but I had been a sales manager for most of my selling career in a player coach role and had hired my own salespeople. I just said, well, let me try, and then built inside their agency and ran for 12 years a full service, sales and business development recruiting practice that I owned for them. So it happened accidentally on purpose.
That could be the title of this episode, Accidentally on Purpose. So thanks for that nugget there.
You're welcome.
I want to focus our conversation on networking and how it relates to one's career. I think you gave a great example sort of yourself there, using your wife as helping you network to get a job and stuff. But how would you define networking?
So I think it's intentionally and strategically looking at what the goals are that you want to accomplish and how you're going to get there, and are there bridges amongst the folks that you have in your life that can help you cross over, and if those bridges aren't there, how can you build them? So I was looking to make a career change. I had a conversation with my girlfriend at the time who said, I love you, but I don't love your job. You're at the ballpark all the time. You're never around. Maybe you should talk to this lady. And then I went to work for Frankel Staffing Partners. And when I got there initially, the first thing that happened was my boss, Rod Frankel, Lee's husband, said, guess what? You're going to network. And we're going to join the chamber, and you're going to go to these events, and you're going to meet people and have conversations, because it's that kind of effort in the market that's going to help us continue to grow intentionally and organically. Because when Rod and Lee moved down here in 1994 from New York and didn't know a soul, the first thing that Rod did was join the Raleigh Chamber and a bunch of Rotary and a bunch of other organizations and just start meeting people. And seeing who they knew and making sure that they understood what he did. And if you have a conversation with someone, whether they're your friend or a family member, or you're at an event and you encounter someone for the first time and you have a really nice conversation with them, you use the 2 ears and 1 mouth principle, right? Where you listen more than you talk. Right. You ask them questions about what they do, and then they share some things, and then they ask you what you do, and you share some things, and inevitably, because it's human nature, they're going to say, oh, okay, well, you do that for a career. Well, I know such and such, or, I just talked to somebody about this, that, and the other. And people are just going to offer to make an introduction or a connection, or say, hey, you know what, my friend did that for a living. You should know them. And so it's almost innate and tribal as part of, the human psyche, I think, to want to help and connect and engage. And so, you have to be strategic and thoughtful about it. And when it comes to, what I do for a living in the recruiting and staffing space, there's networking from the candidate perspective, and then there's networking from the client and recruiter perspective. And those things are, somewhat different, but also very, very similar. But I think, to circle back to answer your question with my long-winded response here, the networking is about knowing who you know and recognizing who you don't, and seeing if there are, points of connection from here to there that can get you where you want to go. And it's a whole lot easier to get referred in or handed off or warmly introduced to someone than it is to try and start up a dialogue or a friendship or anything else cold.
Sure. Absolutely. Totally agree. So, right now it's July 3rd. We've been in this, pandemic situation since March. There are some 40 million people unemployed in the U.S. alone right now. How do you think someone that is amongst the 40 million unemployed, how could they network to sort of help them find their next job?
That is a brilliant ask, and something that, those 40 million people are all trying to solve. And I'm, I hope that this podcast message gets out to a lot of folks, and I hope that I can continue to converse with as many people as possible in that 40 million unemployed so that I can advise them too. There's a lot of noise out there, a lot of noise. So if you think about job postings, Chuck logs on this weekend and you're having a sandwich and a Coke and you're, on the laptop and you're looking for jobs, and you hit Indeed or the other, usual suspects, and, apply to 10 or 15 things. The traffic trying to squeeze in the front door of that opportunity, just like you, is off the charts high right now. It's a very, very, very noisy, cluttered space. And it's very difficult to differentiate yourself and to know, is your profile ever going to get seen given the amount that's flowing in? Am I on track for the role or not? And, that we could do a whole series of podcasts on all that. But from a networking perspective, what I'm encouraging people to do is go look at the positions that you're interested in, and then don't apply yet. Next, go to LinkedIn. And if you have done a good job of utilizing LinkedIn and understanding that it is a networking and job search brokerage tool, see who you know in your network that may have a connection to that company. And if you can find someone that is in your network that has a connection to that company, or you can tell from your network that, oh, Chuck knows Susan over there, and Susan's the recruiter, or Susan's the hiring manager, or Susan, is a leader of organization. You reach out to your network companion, either, if it's personal, shoot them a text, or, shoot them a LinkedIn message and say, hey, I'm interested in this position at, your company, or at this company where your connection works. I'm thinking about applying, but, can you put in a good word for me? Can you help me? I do this all the time because there are plenty of companies in town. I mean, I've been here my entire career, 22 years, been calling on companies and hiring managers and HR leaders and recruiters that entire span of time. And even if it's not an active search of mine or not a client I'm working with, the likelihood that I don't have a connection to the right person in the right place, or I'm not 1 degree of separation away, is relatively low most of the time. So I'm sending notes every day for folks in my network as a favor, and I'll hit up a HR leader or a CEO or a head of recruiting and say, hey, Chuck's a good buddy of mine. He wants to apply to this position. I've encouraged him to go ahead and do so, but I also wanted to make sure that you had a link to his profile and his resume. And I'm not sure if he's exactly what you're looking for or not, but I can tell you he's a great guy and he's a friend of mine. And I hope this helps. Thank you for letting me spread some positive recruiting karma today. So there, and sometimes that will move the interview process forward. Sometimes it will wake up an interview process that's been sleepy, but I've had lots of people get back to me and say, hey, I heard from the recruiter finally, or, hey, thank you for that. They noted in the first conversation that they had gotten a note from you. Does it work every time? Absolutely not. But to network in and try and attack the job situation from both sides is critical right now when the noise level is high, and you cut through the clutter real fast if you're a known quantity.
Sure. Excellent stuff there. I just to share with you, I had so I'm connected with a lot of people on LinkedIn. Lots of the people, if I bumped into them on the street, I probably wouldn't recognize them, and vice versa. But I had an old friend of mine reach out to me and said, hey, I saw you're connected with so-and-so at this company. And I replied back and said, yeah, I'm connected, but it's just because we're both in sort of the hiring field, and I've not ever talked to them. And so I said, what's up? And they said they were interested in a job. And I said, hey, for what it's worth, I'm happy to just send over your profile, and I'm happy to do that for you, and let me know how it works out. So I sent a note similar to yours. Hey, check out this person and stuff. I think I've known them for X number of years, and I think they'd be a good fit, and have a look at them. So I think probably 6-8 weeks had passed, and I heard back from this friend. He actually got the job. So he still owes me a beer. And Gary, if you're listening to this by chance, you owe me a beer still. But he got it, and I think it's he got the job though. He was the right person. He was the right candidate for the job. He had the right skills and stuff like that. But I helped. I helped open the door for him because, like you said, the traffic is crazy. So the amount of applicants that companies get. So good stuff. Do you think there are benefits for 40 million unemployed, but I'm not sure how many more million that still are employed. But can you talk about the benefits of networking for those that still have a job?
Absolutely. So if you have a position, number one, we don't know what's going to happen. Even in a very healthy economy, there can be reorgs or acquisitions or other things that aren't the tragic situation we've been dealing with globally this year that can impact your employment situation. And I've talked to a lot of people in my career who were like, hey, I was really busy working for company X and I had territory Y, or I was traveling amount Z, and I knew a whole bunch about what was going on at my company, but very little about what was going on in my backyard. And when I lost my position or I got laid off or whatever the transition occurred, I was completely unaware of where to turn and who to go to because I hadn't been spending any time building my local network. And so you always need to be making sure that you're building connections and offering to help people and paying favors forward, because you are going to need to lean on your network at some point. It may not ever be an employment situation, but you think about like these websites that are set up, Angie's List and these other things that are kind of almost supposed to be an online electronic recommendation and referral resource. Mm-hmm. The landscaping company that we use here at my house, that my wife and I use as a service, that was a referral from a friend. It's no different. Your network is the place where you go to get trusted advice and guidance, and it's also the place where you pay in with trusted connections and recommendations. So whether it's a good place to go grab that beer with Gary, right, like a new bottle shop, or someone to come and clean your house, or oh my gosh, my sister just lost her job, or my daughter just graduated from college and is moving back home and needs a career opportunity. Employed or not, you should be always thinking about your network. I like to think about my network, whether it's career related or restaurant recommendation related, whatever it is. I like to think about my network like you think about Google or the internet, and how well and how high you show up in the search results. It really has to do with how many links there are back to your page. And the more links there are back to your page, the higher you're going to show up in the search results. And I like to think of myself as a person who is a power connector that has a lot of links coming back to him. And why is that? Well, when you transition from being that guy or that salesperson or that gal or that sales lady to being a resource, and folks are like, have you talked to Will Barfield, or have you talked to Chuck Solomon, or like he knows everyone in town, or he's got great answers to questions. When you become a magnet, a referral magnet like that, there's so much business development value and so much local community value in that, but that cannot be created and cannot be generated. That energy and momentum won't happen unless you're intentional about network building, regardless of the employment situation.
Gotcha. I shared earlier that there are 4 people like within like 6, 8 weeks that said you need to talk to Will Barfield. Um, Several of those people I've actually interviewed for this podcast. One of them was Gerald Bonner. The other one was Terry Harrell, who I just released our conversation that we had a couple of weeks ago on my podcast this morning. The third person was Catherine, and I'm drawing a blank on her last name. I want to interview her for this podcast, but I haven't gotten her to say yes yet. But Catherine. And there's a fourth person whose name also escapes me and stuff, but all 4 of those people within, pretty close order of time all said, you need to talk to Will Barfield. So I'm glad we're getting a chance to talk right now. Can you, Will, do you have any tips on, especially in this current social distancing climate, any tips for those, how they could effectively network, staying 6 feet apart?
Yeah. So, and I've been doing this myself because my wife and I have not reintegrated. I've not been in a face-to-face meeting, an on-purpose intentional networking or client visit or anything since the week of March 9th. So
yep.
Right now, if I'm going to build network, it's got to be done virtually.
Sure.
One of the things I'm trying to do is make sure I stay close to, my key referral partners and other, network builders, and I'm emailing them or messaging them and trying to set up a cadence of Zoom meetings, right? Or whatever your preference is when it comes to an online web portal for a video chat. And I'm just setting up networking meetings, but instead of having coffee together, we're having coffee online and catching up, and they're telling me about their business and I'm telling them about mine, and they're telling me what they're trying to achieve and I'm telling them what I'm trying to achieve. And inevitably 1 or 2 connection requests or suggestions or 1 or 2 referrals comes out of that exchange. I'm watching LinkedIn closely, and I'm watching other news feeds, reading the Triangle Business Journal, WREL Tech Wire, seeing what's going on, and then poking my friends and saying, hey, I just saw that your company's doing this, or hey, did you know about that? And using those as opportunities to create a conversation if we haven't connected in a while. And then with all of the outreaches that I get from my network and market, with people saying, hey, just like you did for your friend, right? Connecting with the opportunity that led to the hire. Yep. Hey, did you see that this company is hiring? Or hey, did you see that this company's announced that they're moving their headquarters here? I mean, folks are reaching out to me and saying, hey, can you help? And with the number of LinkedIn connections that I have, some of them being folks I haven't talked to in a while, or maybe their secondary or even tertiary linkages, I'll look that company up in my LinkedIn and lo and behold, like I've got 2 or 3 connections at this company I didn't even know I had an inroads to.
Right.
And I reach out to my friend. I'm like, hey, this, that, and the other. I heard this, or this person wants this favor, or can you do this for me? And a lot of those have actually turned into networking and business development dialogues that have turned into opportunities for me. So I'd say be intentional about staying in front of the people that you talk to often and that matter most and that really pay into your network, and set up planned one-on-ones with them virtually. And make sure that you are following what's happening in the marketplace. And I try to follow my friends on LinkedIn, and I also try to follow their employers on LinkedIn so that I get alerts and thoughtful notifications, and then can, poke and prod them for, hey, let's talk about this, or hey, I didn't know that was going on, and just letting them know that they're on my mind. Utilize all the tools and technology that we have right now that can feed us actively, where we're passively focused on it, and, make it easy for you to, make the folks in your network feel like they're always front of mind.
Gotcha. Good stuff here. There's a conference that's going on next week that I'm going to be attending virtually. The conference is called the Talent Brand Summit. It's for people that are in employment marketing or recruitment marketing, employer branding. sort of roles. And it's normally an in-person conference. It was supposed to actually be in Austin, Texas back in April, I believe, but they were able to pull it together and make it virtual. And one of the biggest pieces of input that they received was, how are we going to network with people? Like, that was like a big part of this event that's in person. And so they've deliberately and intentionally built time into the schedule to network virtually. In fact, last night I was put in a pod or a team of people. I think there's 15 people in my group, and they said, if you're not already connected to these people, go ahead and reach out to them on LinkedIn already, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with them next week at this conference. So,
Yeah.
I thought that was a great tip there. Will, you're outgoing, extroverted. Not everyone is an extrovert. There's a lot of introverts out there. Do you have any tips for introverts of how they could network?
That's a good question. You know what's funny is, if you looked at my Myers-Briggs, it would show you that I'm actually an I. I am introverted by nature, and yet I know, as a business developer by trade, which really is a natural fit for me as a career, that there's a point where I need to flip the switch to extrovert and fit the situation and setting that I'm in. So
right.
I was a kid in school that didn't raise his hand much and didn't want a lot of attention, and then I've ended up in a career that was exactly the opposite of what you would have predicted if you watched me in grade school and middle school. But introversion or extroversion, being a networker and building your network and being connected really doesn't have anything to do with being gregarious or being the loudest person in the room or someone who needs attention. Networking is more about strategy, and you can be very introverted and yet be very targeted with the way that you network and the people you reach out to, and communicate by whatever method is most comfortable for you. Sending messages. You can even do voice recordings and send those via text or email or through LinkedIn messaging.
Right.
And there are ways that you can link up with people and offer value and pay it forward without having to be extroverted. You talk about this virtual conference. One of the really neat things that's emerged in this transition to having these events that used to be, let's all meet at a convention center or a huge hotel or something and spend a week, or several days at an event. And now it's all having to be done online. I was initially concerned about the networking benefit of that, but it actually really helped not only extroverts but introverts. And here's how. When you jump on that portal and you're, listening to a speaker, and there's a bunch of folks on there, you can scroll and see who's there. And what's been interesting for me, I've been to big, huge networking events at large convention centers, and there's hundreds of people, and I'm talking to Chuck, and we're shooting the breeze, and across the room, I see Sally Sue, and she waves at me, and I wave at her, and I'm like, hey, you kind of mouth to her, I'll be right there. I'll get over and talk to you. And you never do. And there's so many people that are there that you want to see that you just can't get to.
Sure.
Or if you're introverted, you may just kind of, go over to the table where the Bud Light and cheddar cheese cubes are and just kind of hang out there and, not necessarily want to hobnob too much. But in these virtual settings, you can scroll, see who's there. You can send them a private message. Yep. You can just, while the speaker is doing what they do and while you're paying attention to that, you can also have a dialogue going with multiple people, network, connect. You can set up meetings, exchange personal content information, all kinds of things. And that's an introvert's dream, right? If you don't want to have that face-to-face engagement, but you see a bunch of people you want to connect with, shoot them a private chat message and then, share content information and open up a dialogue later. So it's technology and the forced evolution of this, pandemic situation that's made us distant and made us be more remote has actually opened up the aperture for even more creative and successful ways to network, whether you're an extrovert or an introvert.
I still find it hard to believe you're an I on the Myers-Briggs, but I'm an I as well. Not a strong I, but still an I. All aim. I would have pegged you as an E for sure, but it's all good. So, Will, I thank you for your time today and your insights and stuff. If people wanted to get a hold of you, how can they do so?
So they can reach me on LinkedIn. I'm an open connector. And if they have heard this podcast, I would love it if they would mention it. Like, hey, I heard you chatting with Chuck and would love to connect with you. They can visit my website, barfieldrevenue.com. My last name, BARFIELD, barfieldrevenue.com. They want to connect there. They can, send me a connection request or an email or whatever through our admin email address. And I welcome folks to reach out. I always trying to build the network because I never know, who that person might be and what their impact could be on me, or who they know and how that person or I could be, impactful on other folks down the line, networking wise, on either side.
Awesome. Thanks, Will.
You were very welcome. It was a great pleasure.
Likewise. Thanks for listening to the Candidate Experience Podcast. You can reach out to us via our website, thecx.xyz. That's thecx.xyz.